And everything in the universe does start with an expectation, which is our theme for the month of September. This expectation arises from within the universal mind, but it localizes through our individual mind, which in turn becomes our physical reality. Whenever there is recognition or perception of this reality, the brain fires off patterns of individual neurons, which Deepak Chopra refers to as the frequency and phase locking in. Without this synchronization, our perception of this reality, our world would only exist as a series of dots and spots. It's kind of like Facebook uses the algorithms to decide who your 25 friends should be. Anybody familiar with that? So our expectations are thoughts of things we wish to accomplish. And our thoughts, of course, are a movement of energy towards a specific purpose. And that purpose, in turn, supports the evolution of our world. When the pattern beneath this evolution is repetitive, it collapses in the direction of our expectations. And this creates an illusion of what is possible as well as what is impossible through something called race mind or race consciousness. The more our expectations are repeated, the more likely it is that that universal consciousness will create the same patterns. When we define ourselves solely as an individual I, without noticing or engaging in the universal I, we lose the ability to imagine beyond the boundaries of what can become possible. And in The Spontaneous Fulfillment of Desire, which was written by Deepak Chopra, he says that in the universal I, everything is not only possible, it already exists, and simply requires intent to collapse it into a reality in the physical world. So we have to use the power of the mind. As much spiritual substance as we can embody is always available. If we want to break free of what is deemed possible, we need to know how to think the impossible into a reality. So how do we do this? Dr. Ernest Holmes tells us that we do it through something called a mental equivalent. And when I first got into the science of mind teaching, I was in a state of desperation. And I used to go just to get hugged at the front door. It was wonderful. But I started to hear things like, there's a power for good in the universe, greater than I am, and I can use it. I heard things like, God is within me. You mean he's no longer up in the sky with that big book judging right and wrong and up and down and all of that? And I also heard that if I change my thinking, I could change my experience. So the question becomes, how great a consciousness of that power and that presence can we embody? I also heard about something called tithing when I attended the Fort Lauderdale Church for the first time. And I had just gone back into the workforce, and I had received my paycheck, which was all of $12, and I had $5 left, and I said, well, what the heck, I'm just going to throw it in and see what happens. So the next morning I went to the beach, which is one of my favorite places to meditate, and guess what happened? I found $5 in the sand. So how great is your mental equivalent in relationship to the law of giving and receiving. If we believe a little, we only receive a little. So it's important to stretch our spiritual muscle. So it wasn't too long after I started going to the Fort Lauderdale Church on a regular basis that Edwin Gaines came to visit. Everybody knows Edwin Gaines. She's the queen of prosperity. And so I signed up to go to the seminar, and I figured, well, maybe this could work. So I decided to take the plunge. And at the end of the month, I tithed 10% of my gross income. At the end of the second month, I had doubled my income. At the end of the third month, I had tripled my income. And at the end of the fourth month, I had quadrupled my income. So when we fill our ideas with faith, and of course we all know that acronym now, right? Fabulous attitude in the house meaning consciousness, limited conditions have no place anymore. They just lift off. Now, we do not put power into the word, but we do let the power of the law move through us based upon where we are in our level of awareness. So the mental equivalent that I have embodied in my subjective beliefs tells me to tithe 10% of my gross. And I'll never forget the young man who was brave enough to stand up and ask the question of Edwin Gaines, do we tithe on the net or the gross? And in her lovely southern drawl, she said to him, sit down, sugar, and hold on to your hat. It's off the gross. So because I have subjectified that belief, abundance continues to manifest through me. So expectation is the energy beneath all of creation. And Spirit is always giving us opportunities to differentiate through our experience the specific results we desire. Dr. Ernest Holmes would say, to make a demonstration, we have to have a mental equivalent of our desire. So when our thoughts are aligned with this ultimate reality, the law outpictures whatever we can imagine. And whenever I'm looking for inspiration, I always turn to Mother Nature. So I hiked up to Mesa Point at Boca Negra Canyon, which is becoming one of my favorite places to meditate. And I planted a crystal. And on the way out, a chipmunk showed himself. And you may think that you spot the animals or that you find the animals. They show themselves to you. And when they do, they have a message for you. So the chipmunk is the ambassador of play and exploration. And we have been working on connecting to that inner child within us. He reminds us that our spiritual guides are always available. And when we are given information or that healing light energy comes into our experience, it's up to us to funnel that energy through ourselves and down to Mother Earth. So whether you get ideas from animals or angels, or maybe even from today's message, when we embody new conscious thought patterns, our subjective beliefs change and our experience shifts. And this is what the Science of Mind teaching is all about. Although all expectation originates in the universal mind, before it can become a reality in the physical world, it has to move through us. So the chipmunk encourages us to believe in magic. It reinforces the idea that the impossible can become possible. And this stirs that divine feminine creative power within us. Expanding our conscious awareness of the presence of the Great Spirit requires a willingness to recognize the truth of its guidance. Even though sickness and poverty do exist, they cannot remain without a subjective belief that supports them. And Dr. Ernest Holm teaches us in the Science of Mind textbook on page 54, stop and declare that these things, these images of limitation, are neither person, place, nor thing. They have no power, no personality, no presence, and no law to support them. So we just simply say no. The more deliberately we use our conscious thoughts, the more directly the law of mind responds to us. So whose beliefs are creating your experience? Are they left over from your parents? Are they part of something that was influenced upon you by your siblings? Perhaps your peers, or even your minister. Our expectation is a seed in consciousness. Like the seeds in the pods, there's a few of them sprinkled around in the sanctuary. Like this pod has everything it needs within it to create a fern tree, we each have everything within us that we need to create our dreams and our desires. So affirm with me. It's a new day. It's a new dawn. It's a new life. And I'm feeling good. When you feel good, you radiate energy outward, which opens your avenues of creativity and attracts in abundance. And this is the giving and the receiving, the yin and the yang of the universe. So I'm going to ask you all to stand if you can. Some of you have done this before, some of you have not. So right now we're going to shake our booty. It's called a bun dance. Right? And you can be seated. That one never gets old. Everybody loves it. So in reality, there are infinite possibilities of expression that only need our belief to make them real. If we plant, water, fertilize, and nurture our ideas, there is no limit. My mentor, Dr. Arlene Bump, used to always say, I plant the seed, God grows the tree, God has the hard part. So it's up to us to learn to expect the unexpected. Last week I was at Sprouts shopping, and as I walked past the sushi counter, the chef was just putting out fresh things. And so it was an impulse buy, and I went for the squid salad, and the chef said, "Oh, that's delicious today." And into the cart it went. And then as I'm, walking along, I'm realizing that I really don't have the extra $5 to buy this squid salad. So I was going to put it back in the refrigerator case on my way out, but the sous chef was standing right there. And so I didn't have the heart to do it. And remember, people are there to teach you things. People come into your experience to teach you, to help you grow in your consciousness. So I went up to the counter to check out, and I was talking to the cashier, and I noticed that he charged me for peaches that were regular, that weren't organic. And so I said to him, "Excuse me, but those peaches were organic." I said, I just moved here recently, and I really like the store, and I don't want it to close. So the peaches were, the difference in price was like 50 cents. So I packed all my stuff up and paid my bill, and I'm about halfway to the front door, and I hear him yell, "Miss, miss!" And I turn around, and he has the squid salad in his hand. He thought it was part of the next order. So he walked up to me, he handed it to me, and he said, "Welcome to New Mexico." So my 50-cent investment turned into a $5 reward. You cannot outgive God. We have the ability through our local mind to make choices about what we bring in through the non-local mind. So refuse to talk about, refuse to read about, refuse to think about lack or limitation. And when you change your expectations, the false conditions will disappear. We still need to act when the opportunity is provided. And that's the treat and move your feet, the pray and take action. If I hadn't paid that extra money, the experience might not have happened. And that's the yin and the yang. That's the giving and the receiving of the universe. Deepak Chopra says that it is not just a coincidence, it's a gateway to fulfilling your every desire. And on the previous slide you saw the gateway that you could step onto the yellow brick road. And I love that story, The Wizard of Oz, from her ruby red shoes, which is about the root chakra and your connection to Mother Earth, onto the yellow brick road, which is the solar plexus, which is about letting go of the human ego and surrendering to the divine, to the journey to the Emerald City, which is green, which is the heart chakra, which is love, which is where we all want to be. So the gateway is open. Last weekend, there was a geomagnetic storm and a solar planetary influx of 80 billion watts of power. So I encourage you to embody that light energy, to let it transform you, to let go of the old thought patterns, the old beliefs. The truth is now instantaneous in its demonstration for those of us who are willing to do the work. And Dr. Ernest Holmes says that our work will best be done in quiet expectancy and in calm confidence. The results rest in the eternal law of good. So start from a quiet place, from a settled awareness, and ask whether your dreams and your desires are authentic for you, whether they're authentic for our community, for our state, and for the world around us. Spiritual contemplation through meditation is about losing ourselves in the totality of the moment. It's about entering into the universal domain of spiritual awareness. It's about developing a relationship with all of life, both seen and unseen. We are in the world, and we are of it. Discernment is the key that opens the door to the many mansions that are in my Father's house. We choose our individual, unique expression through our emotions. And those emotions, in turn, open up greater avenues of consciousness for our planet and for everyone who dwells in, around, and through it. As is our desire, so is our expectation. So I encourage you to practice divine neutrality. It's a new day, it's a new dawn, it's a new life. And today, I expect only good. Thank you, and namaste.